It is a core belief of the Dadography podcast that dads, through the way that they raise their children, can affect change in the world. This is Dadography, a podcast with stories and insights on fatherhood from dads around the globe, dedicated to providing you with the tools and tips to become a better dad. Hey guys, I'd like to welcome you back once again for another episode of the Dadography podcast. This is season 2, episode 9, and my name is Coray Ward. I'm your host. Today we have a very special guest that we'd like to take the time to talk to personally, and today's guest is you, my friend. The Dadography podcast aims to be a resource for dads everywhere, from dads around the globe. By having transparent conversations with dads, we learn from one another. So far this season, the dads we've had the privilege to speak to have really contributed some solid jewels of wisdom. And before we continue with the season, Vic and I thought it might be good to review some of the tools and insights we've learned so far. One of them that really stood out was from a father in the U.S. named Dwayne Lane. He said the time you spend with your kids when they're growing and they're young is what's going to pay off when they become young adults. A lot of times we can easily get caught up with work or just the busyness of day-to-day life and not contribute quality time to our children. But the reality, guys, is that the time that you spend with your kids is the glue or putty, for lack of a better term, that strengthens the bond. They feel more comfortable talking to you about any given situation. We have to spend quality time with our children. Being a working father myself, I'm aware of how busy things can get at times. But I just wanted to pause today and kind of contemplate and take into some serious thought Dwayne Lane shared with us on the importance of spending time with our children. And he's not the only father. There were a couple of fathers on season 1 who encouraged us to do the same thing. But as you look at the outlay of your day-to-day, and when you see where the bulk of your time is going, whether it's work, whether it's some hobby, whether it's travel, any one of these things may in fact be taken away from quality time with your children. In some cases, it could be to the detriment of your relationship with your child. So with Dwayne Lane's insight, I'd like to encourage you to spend the quality time with your children and make it count. Hey fellas, you can listen to our podcast on YouTube. Find us at the Dadography Podcast. Once again, we are on YouTube, and you can just type in the search bar the Dadography Podcast, and you'll find all of our current and previous episodes. I'd like to invite you to subscribe to us on YouTube so you can get updates when new episodes come out. Welcome back to episode 9, fellas, where we're reviewing some of the conversations we've had so far this season and really making sure that we get all of the benefit of the wisdom that these fathers have shared with us. We just talked about how Dwayne Lane emphasized the importance of the time that we spend with our children, and it needs to be quality time. And I encourage you guys to really just take a look at your agenda, man. Take a look at where you're spending your time and see where there's moments where you can fit your children in more and do something quality with them. We had another conversation, I think it was just last week, as a matter of fact, with JC. And when he was asked about his upbringing and being around his dad, he prefaced the answer by saying this: whether you had a good father or a bad father, an involved father or an absent father, you had the perfect blueprint. And he went on to kind of lay out that if you had a horrible father, if that relationship was strained or abusive, then you had the perfect example of how not to be with your kids. And he went a little bit further and he said, if you had the perfect father and if he was a superhero type dad, quality time and love and affection, then you have the perfect blueprint of the type of father to be. And one of the things that I walked away from, and I imagine that maybe you did too, is that it's not sufficient to make excuses as to why you're not the kind of dad that you think you should be. You had the perfect blueprint. So you can be the type of dad that you think you should be. And that's what we're here for, guys. We're here to encourage you to do just that because it is a core belief of the Dadography podcast that dads, through the way that they raise their children, can affect change in the world. Coray here, wanting to give you a personal invitation to follow us on Instagram. You can find us at Dadography Podcast. It's really good because you get an opportunity to put a face with the voice that gave you some insight or some encouragement on your journey in fatherhood. We look forward to having you follow us on Instagram at Dadography Podcast. Hey guys, welcome back to the show. Today, we're simply reviewing some of the conversations we've had with dads here recently. And we've already discussed the importance of spending time with your children as encouraged to us or given to us by Dwayne Lane. We've discussed the blueprint that you have on fatherhood as encouraged and tipped to us from JC, one of our former guests, Mr. Joey Levy. We talked about the importance of setting or teaching your children a certain mindset or perspective. And he suggested we do so by helping them to understand that things don't happen to you, things happen for you. And the difference there is significantly bigger than just a change of the conjunction in the sentence. It really has to do with them being able to overcome a challenge or some difficulty simply by understanding that in the long run, if they're able to get over this, it will serve them because they will have learned from that challenge or difficulty. So things don't happen to you. They happen for you. And if we can teach our children to embrace that mindset, we will have given them a worthwhile tool that will serve them for the rest of their life. So fellas, I just really wanted to pause today, really slow down and give some thought to what we've heard so far. As I mentioned earlier, the idea of the podcast is not just to have some degree of entertaining value, but to also serve you well and to really be a resource for you. Thanks a lot, guys, for listening to another episode of the Dadography podcast. Sincerely appreciate you and your support. I do want to encourage you once again to like, subscribe, comment on whatever streaming platform that you use so that we can continue to grow the audience and reach fathers around the globe with the purpose of ultimately making an impact on the world. Thank you, guys. Take care. And next week, we'll have another conversation. We hope you've enjoyed this episode of the Dadography podcast. Thanks very much for listening. I would, however, like to invite you to be a part of the show. Visit our website at dadography.net. Scroll down to the bottom of the page. Click on the microphone. Tell us your name, where you're from, and what fatherhood means to you. Remember, it takes more than DNA to be a dad.